really what I want to talk to you about tonight is something that it's not really hard to sell, I think, because you're all either you already have dealt with it, you personally are dealing with it, or have dealt with it, or you will deal with it in the future, or someone that you love very personally will deal with it. Like the odds are just they're just stacked against you. So for us to go like, well, drugs, what are drugs? I don't have to worry about drugs. I guarantee you, and this is my, not that my guarantee means anything, but this topic will impact your life. So I would encourage you to lean into the conversation because I think what I'm going to teach you tonight is something that I learned, and it really changed everything that I knew to be true about people who struggle with this stuff. So maybe you've been growing up, and when you hear the word drugs, you just think of, oh, those weirdos over there, or you think of addiction, you think of, oh, those people that live at like the homeless shelter. That's who the addicts are. But what's really true about that is that addiction, especially drug addiction and dependency, is it's in about 40% of all American households to some extent, which is insane, yo. That means like if there's 10 of you, like partner yourself up into 10 in your mind, 4 people in your life will have drugs in your house, or they might be taking like prescription medicines in a way that's abusing them. So I would encourage you to do that. I want to try to show it to you in kind of a fun way. Can I not use this? Oh, I need the microphone for the thing, huh? So I can record it. Okay, I'll use this then. I'm going to be obedient. You're real tall. All right, so here's what we're doing. I want to show you what the addiction model is. What I mean by addiction model is maybe you're thinking to yourself, this is a really important question. Like, who signs up on day one to go, I want to lose my family, I want to kill my marriage, I want to break my relationship with my kids, I want the courts to take away my family from me, I want to lose everything that I've ever inherited, I want to be written out of my parents' will, I want to end up with big abscess marks on my body, I want to have these big boils and cuts all over my arms, I want like my teeth and face to kind of be rotting away. Like, sign me up for that. The issue is, like, no one signs up for that junk. Like, that no one would ever go, oh, that sounds great. Please take my family. That's not the way that it starts. So the question we have to ask is, like, how in the world do you get there? How do you go from you sitting here right now, where you are, maybe a little bit inquisitive, maybe some of you already understand what I'm talking about, but you go, how could anyone get there? And I want to show you kind of a model, but to show you that model, I'm actually need some helpers. So, okay, yeah, you can come up here for sure. Yeah, come here. What's your name? Faith. Yeah, with the beanie. Yeah, you seem hardcore. Isla, you come on up here. Yeah, you with the hair. Okay. Yeah, Miss Cummings. What, is she going to be good at what you don't know what I'm doing? How would you know? Why are you? Okay, come here. What's your name? How many of you are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Okay, Isla, come here. You're going to be my addict. Yay. All right. Give me your name. Macy. Not just Miss Cummings. What's your actual name? Julianne, and then Faith. Okay, you guys are going to come over here, and you're just going to sit right there on the ground. Yeah, sit. And then, what's your name? Susie. That's a fantastic name. What's your name? Isabel. Bella. If your name was anything to the bell, you'd have whatever, Susie. All right. This is your fault. Okay. So, Bella, Isabel, Bella. Man, okay, can you guys sit down right there? You two sit down. And then, Susie, you're going to stay here right now. Okay. So, let me show you. This is the way that your brain works, okay? It's really important to understand this because you don't choose this. You can't stop it. You can't morph it. This is how God made our brain. God made our brain to become addicted to Him, which is a crazy thought. The way that your brain is chemically designed is people for a long time thought that your brain was just static. It just, like your brain and what's your name? Kira. You just had your brain, and then your brain just was that same way your whole life. And then they began to be able to open up people's skull while they were still alive, and they watched there's there's these like electrical connections in your brain. They're called synapses, the places, the electrical magnetic currents that they travel through. There's literally more electrical connections in your brain, than the entire county of Los Angeles combined. So even for you to hear me right now, your brain actually sees me through your eye, and then it's projected into your brain, but the image you see of me is actually upside down, so your brain flips it right side up. But right now, the way that you see me, I'm upside down. But your brain knows that can't be the case, so it flips me right side up. So that's why I'm right side up to you right now, but I'm actually upside down if you actually examine your visual cortex. Now, every single one of you, without knowing it, your brain has canceled out the nose in front of your face. You can't see it. But now you can because you're thinking about your nose. You see it now? Your nose is back because you're focused on it. Okay? You ever done that before where you start focusing on your breathing and then you're like, I breathe like a weirdo because, or like your heartbeat, you can't control that stuff. But your brain is perfectly adapted to live in the world that we live in, but God made it to observe Him, to love Him, to get to know Him more, to be in awe of Him, and then it made your brain to become addicted to Him. So, like when you get married someday, the way that your brain's designed is that on day 1, you're going to like that person. On day 50, you're going to keep liking that person, but it's going to be a different kind of liking. You literally, because of the way that God designed sex, which I think Kurt talked about a little bit last week, you become addicted to whoever you get married to. God made you to become addicted to them, which is why even when they're doing dumb stuff, you stay with them sometimes. We got commitment and stuff like that too. I for sure understand that. But that's the way that your brain works. Now let me show you how your brain works on drugs, okay? The same system that was meant to connect you to your future husband is to connect you to God. If we misuse it, your brain doesn't know what's right and what's wrong. Let me give you an example. My son's name's Peyton. He's 4. I've got 2 sons and a daughter, and then the 4th baby, we don't know the gender, okay? But my oldest son, his name's Peyton. He's 4. And Peyton has this little life vest. We call it Sharky. Maybe your younger siblings have one of these, or maybe you've seen one. But you put it, there are these weird ones now where it's not like a full life vest. You put your arms in the little, like, sleeves, and then there's just, like, that little thing across the front, and then they just kind of wade in the water. Like, I mean, he doesn't do much. He just kind of waddles around in the water. So that's how it works. On the back of Sharky, and then there's, like, just a little clip on the back, so it clips there. And then the idea is you lean forward, and the buoyancy of that Sharky device keeps you afloat. Yay, saving lives one day at a time. Well, we went to Mexico a couple years ago, and my wife, Paige, made a rule with Peyton. She said, you may not go in the water without Sharky on. So my son, who is a rebel but pretty obedient, actually, but he really likes to test the limits, he goes, and when we're not paying attention, there was actually a pool in our hotel room, which was stupid. Don't worry, we didn't pay for it. My parents did. So he goes into the hotel room pool, and he puts his Sharky on, but he puts it on backwards. So when he puts it on backwards, then the buoyant device is on his back. And then instead of getting in the water and your life-saving device doing that, saving your life and keeping you afloat, it actually does the opposite. So when you put it on your back, then all of a sudden the buoyant part of it is in the back, and it actually just pushes his head underwater. And if my wife wasn't walking by in that moment, Peyton's head was pushed underwater, and he can't swim, he couldn't breathe, he was kicking and screaming for his life underneath the water. So my wife came in, literally grabbed him by his arm and ripped him out of the water, and he's screaming and he's crying. And I don't tell you that story to bum you out. I tell you that story because your brain, when used properly, does everything that it's supposed to do. But your brain doesn't know. It doesn't know when you're manipulating it in such a way that's going to be destructive to you. It doesn't know. It keeps being the same brain. It does the same processes whether you're using it properly to connect to a husband, to connect to something beneficial in your life, to connect to people, to connect to friends, to connect to God. Your brain has a system by which you can connect to those things. But if you use it improperly, your brain doesn't shut off. If you tell it to connect to other things that are bad, your brain doesn't go, oh, no, we know better. It will connect to those things anyway. And that's kind of how this system works. So let's say Isla, what sport do you like to play? Oh, okay, she likes to dance. All right, so let's say, please don't dance, this is church. So let's say Isla, she loves to dance. So let's say whenever Isla finishes a dance recital, the way that your brain is made is that there's this chemical in it called dopamine. And dopamine is a chemical that gives you a really good feeling, but dopamine by itself doesn't do anything. When dopamine it's called excreted, it means like there's these little pumps in your brain that have dopamine and they push it out. So when your brain excretes or pushes out dopamine, it does it because it wants to reward you for doing something. You see, our bodies know intrinsically that something was a good thing. And when we say a good thing, it means maybe it's going to help us to get a better job, or maybe it's going to help us to get married someday, or maybe it's going to help us do something that's healthy. Whenever we do something that's good for us or beneficial, or it's supposed to bring us joy, your brain secretes this little bit of dopamine, and then, so you're going to be dopamine, Susie. You're dopamine number one, okay? So, Isla, you finish your dance recital. Give me a final pose. Oh, that's, okay. Okay. Anyway, so that's her final pose, and then as soon as she hits her final pose, the crowd they're like, that's amazing. And no, not you. Not you. You're a dopamine. Please stop, okay? So in Isla's brain now, she went, I just did something that was good. Maybe she can make a career out of it, and her brain goes, Isla, we should reward you for feeling like this. Because this is great. Because, look, it gets us attention. People like it. Maybe they'll give me a job. Maybe my future husband is somewhere in this big dance. Okay, so your brain goes, all right, excrete dopamine. Reward Isla. We want to reward Isla because then the next time when she's like, should I do dance practice or not? Her brain's going to go, of course you will. Remember the reward? Go seek the reward again. So it causes us, it's called your limbic reward system. Your brain then secretes dopamine. And this is Susie. Susie is dopamine number one. So she's one part dopamine. And then so Isla's brain goes, yay, we did a great job. We won the dance thing. Do you guys have dance competitions? You don't win. There's winners and losers. There's not just like, we all dance for fun. Cool. Okay. I don't know how it works. I learned recently you can competitively cheerlead, and that freaked me out. So, okay. So Isla's brain goes, yeah. So Isla, go ahead and take a step back. We're going to secrete dopamine. Reward Isla. So Susie's going to come in, and then your brain secretes dopamine, but your dopamine's just kind of flowing around in your cerebellum in your brain. And then it doesn't give Isla a good feeling until it hits a dopamine receptor. So, Faith, can you come up here? You're going to be dopamine receptor number one. Stand right here. So, Isla finishes. Yay, this is awesome. Susie, you're going to go link arms with dopamine receptor. And as soon as those two meet, in that very moment, that's when maybe you've experienced this before in your life where maybe you scored like a goal in a big game, or you got your test back and you got an A, or your parents said, we're getting a puppy, or you heard that Shara is going to have Raylan for the first time or have a baby for the first time. And you're like, yay, this is awesome. And that kind of stuff happened. Do they? Okay, for the second time. Okay, cool. Halfway through I went, I don't know if this is public yet. So you find out she's having a baby and you're like, freak out. Your brain goes, yay, reward her. And that's what happens. One part dopamine comes and meets one part dopamine receptor, and as soon as they hit, your body goes, yes, this is great. Or maybe you start crying, you get happy, okay? So Susie, you can come back over here. Faith, you can stay right there. This is your body's natural way of rewarding itself. One part to one part. Healthy to healthy. So then every time Isla finishes a dance recital, she has this good feeling. She has a good feeling. She has a good feeling. Here's what drugs do. Drugs, they do something called secreting pseudodopamine. So there's healthy things in your life, just like Sharky. It's meant to reward you because is dancing a good thing? Yeah. Is it good for your health? Could it further your future? Could you get into college because of it? Your brain goes, this is awesome. We should dance more. Here's what drugs do. Drugs takes that exact same system, but instead of rewarding you for doing something beneficial in your life, drugs finds a way to manipulate or to manufacture or to cheat your system in your brain. And it says, what if, Isabel, not a la, you're the la, Isabel. Your brain says let's say you're smoking weed or whatever, okay? You smoke weed and you have like one little weed, right? Okay. One little joint. I don't know the lingo that y'all are using these days. A roach. So, shut up, Madison, okay? I'm trying my best. All right. She's one of my former students. She's one of my favorites. Don't tell her I said that. So now, let's say you're just going to use that as an example. Let's say you are going to smoke a joint, right? Well, then there it is. That's okay. Okay. You smoke a joint. Don't clap for me, okay? I'm pathetic. Then your brain goes, wait a minute. We didn't do anything good, but when you take in that smoke and you take in the THC and you take in the different cannabinoids and everything, your brain says, there's a call from the brain, and it says we're supposed to secrete dopamine. And your body's like, for what? You're like, I don't know. That's what drugs do. Drug tells you to secrete dopamine, but for no reason. Just do it. But it doesn't do just one bit. It sends a whole bunch. So let's say when she dances, how much dopamine does Isla secrete? When she smokes weed, Isla secretes 2. So now both of you grab one of each of Faith's arms over there. Isla's going to smoke weed. Don't do that, Isla. And then she connects, and then here's what happens. Now, Faith, who previously had 1-to-1, the ratio was 1-to-1, she now has 2-to-1. And guess what? Do you think this is a good feeling for Isla? Yes. In fact, the amount of dopamine is higher than the dopamine receptors. So your brain is now experiencing an imbalance, and it says it feels like the amount of dopamine is higher than our receptors. That's why we call it a high, or it feels like I am high. That's what we mean when we say that. So let's say Isla finishes her joint, and she's like, whatever you do with those after that. I don't know. Okay. Susie and Isabel, you're going to go back over there. Okay. Now, here's what our brain is meant to do. Because what the system God put in our brain is that Isla now thinks, her brain tells her, you know what? We weren't ready for that. That was overwhelming. And what if that happens again? We don't want to be ill-prepared. So your brain has the ability to create more dopamine receptors. So as soon as you get overwhelmed, your brain goes, time to manufacture more dopamine receptors. So Faith is sitting right here, and then all of a sudden, Macy, right? Without knowing it, she didn't ask for it, she wasn't aware of it. Isla's brain just made another dopamine receptor. Now there's 2 of them. Now, they each, to experience the same feeling as before, are going to require 1 bit of dopamine apiece, and if they want to experience a high, they're going to require what? 2 bits of dopamine apiece. So, now let's say, Isabel, you can sit down. Isla, you're going to dance again. Okay, hit your final pose. Boom. And how much dopamine is secreted when she finishes a dance recital? All right, go. Check it out. See what happens. Oh, no. Macy, where's your dopamine? You ain't got one. And so what does Isla's brain naturally do? Isla's brain goes, oh, this sucks. When you smoked weed, we were overwhelmed. It was great. We had a party. Everyone was hanging out. Everyone started eating a bunch for some reason. It was weird. That was a weird joke. I shouldn't have said that. Okay. Stop it, Tessa. So now Isla's brain is going, wait a minute. Dancing used to be fun. It used to be 1-to-1. And now Isla finishes her dance recitals and she goes, ugh. I mean, it's still okay. Half of 1-to-1. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not awesome. But then Isla thinks to herself, you know what? I want to experience that high again. So, Susie, go back over there. And now, if Isla does she smokes the exact same amount of marijuana that she did before, how many bits are due over there? Okay, go. Same amount of marijuana as before. Isabel, go ahead. 1-to-1 as a ratio. Now, no, you connect to Macy. There you go. No, you guys separate now. Separate. There you go. Now, try to follow me on this. Is she high again? No, she's not. What does high mean? More dopamine than receptors. Is she high right now? No. In fact, a ratio of 1-to-1, now the same amount of weed she smoked before is equivalent to when she used to do what? Dance. So dance is now, the same amount of dopamine is meh, but in order to get high, what must she do? More. So let's say Bella over here, she finishes one joint and she's like, man, I don't feel the same way I used to feel. So she goes, well, I've got to do more. So then Bella gets sent over there, and all of a sudden the party's back on. And Faith And Macy, the dopamine receptors are like, we're overwhelmed again. There's a higher amount of dopamine than receptors. Therefore, we are high. Now, you guys can begin to experience how the process plays itself out. Dopamine back over there. Receptors over here. God created your brain for order, not chaos. Now, the dopamine receptors just experience overwhelming amount of dopamine. So what do? They replicate themselves. So, Julianne, right? Julianne, if only you had more confidence. I'm just kidding. You're eccentrically confident. She's like, hey, look at me. I'm the world. Okay, so look at her. Julianne gets up, and now, Isla, dance recital time. Hit that pose, homie. Okay. Yo. All right, Suze. She just nailed the dance recital, and her brain thinks to itself, okay, now listen, it does suck. And now you've triggered a system in your body by which, does Isla care about dance anymore? No. What does Isla want? And let's say dancing was her favorite thing to do, so that's one bit. Let's say hanging out with their family. You love hanging out with your family, with Jeff, India, Israel, and your mom, Erin. You love all that stuff. And that's one bit to one bit. But everything Isla now does in her life is 1 bit dopamine to 3 bits dopamine receptor. Now, remember the thing I said at the beginning? Who signs up day one and goes, I want to have absent marks on my body. I want to lose my family. I want to lose everything. No one signs up for that. But you don't know what you're doing. The more that you do this, the more dopamine receptors that are created. Now, Susie, if you go back over here, in order for Isla to experience something that even resembles a high, you get the process. She can't do what she did before. So people will make an argument. They'll go, well, you can't become addicted to marijuana, which that's not true. It means you can't become physically addicted to marijuana, which means you won't go through physical withdrawals when you stop having it, but your brain can get addicted to anything. Your brain can get addicted to sex. Your brain can get addicted to pornography, and it's the exact same thing. Every time you take God's ingrained system to experience Him and the world around you, and you secrete dopamine in a way that's fake and it shouldn't be rewarding to you, your brain doesn't shut off. Sharky was meant to keep you afloat if you wear it forwards or backwards. If you use the system correctly, it will honor the joy of your life. If you use it incorrectly, it will kill you. It will literally kill you. Because there will come a point where there's not an amount of marijuana that Isla can do in order to satisfy this craving. So her only option in order to experience this craving again is to do what? Something harder. Something more intense. Or to create some kind of like a speedball effect where you're going to take an upper and a downer at the same time, right? Well, I'm going to drink a lot of alcohol, and then I'm going to take some kind of like Ritalin or some kind of a speed-up drug. And so you create these things in your body, and it whacks with your body so much that it secretes dopamine, but then that's what you chase. So every time you hear about someone on TV, especially people that are famous, what you're going to realize is that they have manipulated their brain so much with drugs and alcohol that it'll kill them, right? Think about, like, just in the past few years, that guy from Glee, Heath Ledger, there's a lot of people in our world who kill themselves. Do they walk in the room going, and this amount will kill me, that'll do? No. But the joy in their life is gone. And before they do that, you look behind the scenes and realize they've hurt their family, they've gotten divorced, they don't care about anything else, they don't chase anything that they used to love, because there's so many dopamine receptors in their brain because they've abused it for so long that in order to experience any high, they have to put a fatal amount of drugs in their system in order to do so. That's why people die of drugs. That's why my uncle at 44 died of alcohol poisoning, and I never saw him sober. I always thought, well, he must just not love us then. But that wasn't the case. When you're addicted to something, nothing in your normal life can bring you joy anymore. Even though you know cognitively. When you're sober, like when Isla's not high and when she's not seeking to reward herself through the limbic reward system, and I asked her, Isla, what's more important to you, marijuana or family? Just what do you know to be the correct answer? What's more important, marijuana or family?
Family.
Family's more important. She knows that. So when she's sober, she makes a great decision. But you guys might have already felt this in your life. As soon as that trigger hits and you want to pursue that drug of choice, again, Don't think that it has to be some kind of a drug. You can get addicted to a boyfriend. You can get addicted to your own sexuality. You can get addicted to pornography. You can get addicted to popularity. Did you know the exact same limbic reward system that is triggered by drugs is triggered by when you turn on your Instagram and you see a heart show up on the bottom right of your screen, which means you got a like? Did you know that they're doing brain scans of girls that are your age, and what they're understanding is that your addiction to your smartphone actually far surpasses that of many people who are in rehab for their drug addiction? Anytime you use the perfect reward system God gave you, and so what does social media represent for us? Well, not drugs. Yeah, we love drugs. No, what I mean is, what did God give us as a gift that we're now using social media to kind of put a Band-Aid on it? God made us for friendship, right? To be found in Him, to find our identity in Him. And we've manipulated that and gone, well, can't I just use Instagram or Facebook instead, right? Or Snapchat? Won't that do the same thing? It's like a drug. You're replacing what God meant with something fake. And so you can literally, and some of you already feel this. Some of you, when I said the word phone, that's now all you're thinking about. When I said the word Instagram, now that's all you're thinking about. Or when I talked about a boy, now that's all you're thinking about. And realize that's as simple as addiction is. Here's the definition of an addiction. Are you ready for it? The definition of addiction is this. It's carrying on an action. It's to carry on an action even though there are bad consequences. To carry on an action, even though there are bad consequences, where you make the right choice when you're sober. So the fancy term for it is to carry on an action in light of adverse consequences when sobriety would change it. Now, that's a fancy way of saying it, right? That's the technical definition. But just remember this. Anytime you keep doing something, even though you know it's going to reap a bad result in your life, but if I told you right now, what would you rather have when you're sober, you would make a better decision. So when I tell Isla, what's more important, drugs or family?
Family.
But when she's in the middle of her high, and I say, hey, you can either keep smoking right now or you can have your family, she might verbally say family. But what we find from addicts is they'll steal from their family, they'll lie to their family, they'll abuse their family, they'll hurt their family. Now in rehab, when you go, why did you do this? They'll go, I don't know. It felt like it wasn't me. It's because it's not. Addiction is a disease that we have. When you keep manipulating your brain enough, your brain reshapes itself. And when your brain reshapes itself, then you have a disease. A disease is something that needs to be treated with medicine. And I don't just mean, doesn't necessarily need to be in like some kind of prescription, but medicine means you need to see someone for that disease. Someone outside of yourself has to help you. That's what we mean by disease. Okay? And if you've ever been in addiction or someone in your family's been in addiction and they've gone through something called the 12 steps, which is one of our primary ways in America to help someone through addiction, the first step, and this is remarkable, after admitting that you've got an issue, is to put your faith in a higher power. Now, this is a secular document, right? It's not like, dear Christians, here's what you need to do. Even the secular world, that means people outside of the church, they say if you want to get over your addiction, you have to acknowledge that there is a power that's bigger than you that you need to seek for help. So all of my lovely helpers, you guys can go have a seat. Thanks for being dopamine. Thanks for being an addict. And thanks for being receptors. I appreciate that. But in the past 10 minutes, you said 8:15? 8:15? I wanted to kind of open up to some questions that you guys might have after kind of listening to this process and understanding a little bit better. So for you guys, what questions in terms of drugs, addiction, dependency do you guys have that I could help field for you tonight, or I could help answer for you? Yes, Macy. Yeah, okay, so that's a good question. So not all marijuana that's grown, not all cannabis or marijuana that's grown has the same opioids in it, the same drugs in it that make someone high. So there's different kinds of oil, like CBD oil or cannabinoid oil, that can, like my brother has epilepsy. So my younger brother he has seizures, right? So you know what seizures are? You guys know that? Okay, cool. My brother has that. And one of the things that the doctor prescribed him was like cannabinoid oil pills. So he'll take pills that have like, it's the oil from the cannabis plant, but there's nothing, it can't get you high. There's different doses that doctors can prescribe. And as Christians, we would say if you're smoking medicine, or if you're smoking marijuana for medicinal reasons, and it's like verified by a doctor and it's really actually helping you, then we wouldn't really have a pushback to that. That's not a sin. That's not something that's wrong. It's when you're manipulating your body's system in order to experience a high that God was meant to provide for you. So that's a really great question, Macy. So I don't broad paintbrush all marijuana that way. There are some benefits of certain people who have certain diseases or certain kinds of arthritis, or seizures is a big one that can really help them. So we want to make sure there's a distinction there between what is healthy, medicinal, and what is recreational and possibly toxic and harmful to you. Yes, Paige. What a great question. Okay. I should have really answered that when I was talking. So the rule of thumb is your brain, there's a fancy word, it's called your brain is neuroplastic, which means that your brain is kind of like Play-Doh. Okay, so it can be morphed and it can be changed. Now, you know the answer to this. If you leave Play-Doh out in the same position for a long time, what happens to it? It gets hard. It gets dry and it gets hard. So when we talk about the brain, your brain is a little bit similar to that. The more times you feed it the same thing, think about walking up a path. Like imagine at the top of your hill is like your high, is reaching the top of your hill. Whenever you take the same path up that hill, and then you walk back down and you walk back up, let's say there used to be branches growing over it and there were weeds everywhere. But if you walk up and down it every day, what's going to happen to that path? It's going to clear up. Yeah, good. Okay, it's going to be well-worn. It's going to be easier to trek. It's going to be simpler for you. It's going to take you a lot less time. But if you leave that trail alone for a while, what's going to happen? The overgrow is going to come back, and the weeds are going to come back up, and then it'll be more difficult for you to go back up that path again. That's what your brain's able to do. So if you've been doing something over and over, it's like a well-worn path. So whenever you go, I'm sad, it goes, oh, go to marijuana, do it. We know that path well. It's simple. Go back to your boyfriend. You know, he might be a little bit abusive, but it's worth it because he makes us feel a certain way. Or go back to Instagram, or get more followers, or wear something more risky so that everyone will look at you tomorrow. This is great. That can all be an addiction. If you leave that path alone for a while, and you go, I'm not going to feed this anymore. I'm going to let it overgrow. I'm going to let it sit there. But a lot of people in the neurosciences believe that it takes about half as long to heal from your addiction for the period you've been addicted to something. So that's hard. So imagine if you've had a pornography addiction for a year, how long can you expect until your brain resets itself? About 6 months. That means 6 months of going, I'm not going to participate in this. And then your dopamine receptors over here are going to go, why am I even here anymore? Let's say you were so involved in drugs, you have like 9 of them. But Isla goes, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to dance. And slowly what happens is Isla begins to pick up the rhythm of dance again. She begins to like it again. She begins to enjoy her family. Why? Because she has seceded from that so long that her dopamine receptors, her brain does the same thing as it did when it created them. It was like, man, we don't really use you guys anymore. Like, you're fired. And so the dopamine receptor number 9 is like, fine. And then it goes and it disappears. And 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, until there's only 1 left again. And then all of a sudden, Isla gets up to dance, and she goes, wow, I feel like I'm back home again. Like, I feel like I love this again. I want to do this more. Why? Because she killed all those dopamine receptors that were placed there when she abused that drug. So the same system God gave us that can create addiction is also the grace that he gave us to go, you're not stuck in that forever. But most people will say that if they've experienced an addiction, those pathways are so worn that even throughout their whole life, there will always be a tendency to want to go back. But if you kill it for long enough, and you cold turkey and you get away from that, then eventually that path will wear out. And then it'll be, there's healing from it. So the disease can actually be cured. So, Paige, great question. Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Avery. Hi, Avery. What's up? Yes. Okay, so read me back the definition of addiction. Good. And the last part of it is, and you would make a different choice if you were sober. Okay, so Avery, you have a boyfriend? No. You addicted to boys? You addicted to boys? But you like them. Okay, that's not the same thing. Good. Okay. Would you say, where you sit right now, do you get along with your parents? You love your family? You have any siblings? Okay. What if you had a boyfriend and he was like, I want you to like sneak out of your house and come over and hang out with me some late night. And right now, I was like, Avery, what decision would you make? Some boy, some scrub calls you, and he's like, Avery, what up, girl? And you're like, what do you want? And he's like, come over, let's hang out. My parents aren't home. Good decision or bad decision? Okay. So what's addiction? Addiction is if you're in a relationship, and right now in this moment you go, that would be dumb. It could cost me health with my parents. It could cost me my freedom. It could cost me my life. You sneak out of your house on your own, and you're like this age, and you like Uber there? Like, what do you walk there? Right? People are weird, man. People are creepy. You could lose your life. In this moment, you make a really rational decision. That's a stupid thing to do. So what addiction is if there's a point in your life where someone calls you to do that, and you start sneaking out of your house, and then you get home and your parents go, the frick were you thinking, man? And they're like, you could have died. You could have done this. And you're like, but I love him. Guess what? Guess what, Avery? You're addicted. That's how you know. If you're sober, which you are right now, you go, that list is not worth him. You'll know you're addicted because that list, which is really long, through your lens of addiction will go, it's worth it. But all your friends, your parents, everyone else in your life is going to go, Avery, are you dumb? And you're going to go, whatever, we're in love. You just don't understand. We've got something so unique. And I only say that because almost everyone in this room who's like been in a real relationship or married at some point you looked at your significant other in the eye and you were like, we are so special. We are so unique. We have a love like no one else has ever had before. This is the way that the world is. But it's not true, right? So that's how you know you're addicted. If you continue to carry on an action and all your friends are like, that's the dumbest decision ever, but you can't help yourself, that's what addiction is. So it's a great question. So addiction doesn't always look like someone strung out like, I don't understand. It can look something very simple like that. I got one question. I got 2 minutes. Thrasher, Skate and Destroy. Same thing. Same exact thing. Yep. I can take one more because that was fast. Yes. Yes. Not as potent, but yes. Potent means like extreme. Sorry. And by the, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. What was your name? Jacqueline. No. No, those represent chemical imbalances in the brain that aren't necessarily onset by choices that are made, but they can be innate to someone. But you still need help, right? Those are still considered neurological diseases. And like depression can just be the amount of serotonin in your brain versus the amount of vasopressin, oxytocin, delta phos B. If that's all out of whack, you need help from a doctor. But that isn't a result of you continuing to do something in your life. So that's a good question. If it's 1 minute or less, I can take it. Yeah, that's a really good question. And obviously, growing up as a twin with him, I'm sure you've been through a lot and you've had to experience a lot. And for sure, yeah, at least developmentally or mentally, you feel like you're much more advanced, at least, than he is. For sure. First of all, I think it's awesome that you're asking that question. It shows that your heart is really to care about him and to care for him. I think just that, what was your name? Anastasia. I think that's going to take you a long way in and of itself. I wish I could give you a more comprehensive answer, but I would say like make sure that you're communicating with your small group leader on a regular basis. And really when it comes down to that, because that is something that's, some of it's chromosomal, and then some of it is also a part of, it's just a part of an imbalance there, that I don't have a great like cover-all answer. It's very selective to each individual case. So just keep loving him like you're doing it, though. That can mean so much for people. But then walk with your small group leader, and they're going to help you out a lot more than that. I keep loving him, though. We all need love, no matter what is going on upstairs. Cool. Thank you guys for letting me come and hang out with you.